everyone. This is the first movie for Access, Chapter 2, Pause and Practice number 1. So in the last chapter, we were introduced to access the objects, a table, queries, forms, reports. We looked at the concept of fields and records. And when we're talking about fields, we're talking about data types and characteristics, which are called properties within Access, and created a table. We put some data in the table, so we entered it. Remember, tables were the data stored, so we entered some data manually, and then we also imported from Excel, showing you how you can take data that exists in another form, and it could be Excel, it could be a comma delimited file, it could be an XML file, and you can import those, and you can either create a new table with it, or you can do like we did and just append to an existing table. So in Chapter 2, we're going to continue looking at design of tables. But in the first chapter, we looked at doing that design work within that datasheet view, which for me just doesn't work so well, just because that's when I learned we didn't have that view, so it's hard for me to see how that's clear. But I do find students that like creating their tables in that view. So once we get through creating a table right now in design view, you need to weigh what makes more sense to you. Although I do want you to know that in the design view that we're working on right now, you do have more features or functions that you can control than when you're in the datasheet view. That's why you kind of have to be familiar with both of them. So in this Chapter 2, there's 3 pause and practices. So if you take a look at our assignment Dropbox in Blackboard, we have 2 files. Both of them, look at the extension, both of them are Excel files. And I have to warn you, this service history data file, it may work, it may not work, okay? All of the instructors that teach this course understand that sometimes this, for some reason, it doesn't work. It is the last step to import this last file. So if you run into problems, just let your instructor know that those records will be missing. This we never have a problem with. So go ahead and start by downloading both of these, and then they'll be in your downloads folder so that we can work. Now, so if we look at what we have to do in this first pause and practice, we need to, of course, get into Access. So you're going to open up Access, and remember, when you're creating a new database, we're going to do a blank database. You always have to give it a name right here and a location. So if you just hit create, it's going to be called database 1, and you don't want that. So we're going to have this, and it's going to be your initials, PP, A, 2-, and then there's 3. So we're going to do a 2-3. And I am going to change the location. I'm going to put it in my downloads where everything is, and I get rid of it. So you put it in wherever you are comfortable and know where the file is. Just pay attention to where that is. And we're going to create. So remember last time when we went in, it automatically takes you to this table in datasheet view, the design of datasheet, if you will. So we want to actually switch over to design view, and remember that's this left button here. We had used it before on the home, but it's also on table tool fields, and we're just going to click on the top part of that button, and it asks us, what do we want to call this? We're going to call it equipment. That's the name of the table, the object table. Let me make sure I spelled that right. Okay, we're going to do OK. It's going to switch to design view, and it's going to be a table called equipment. By default, when you create a new database and it creates this new table, it makes a field that's an auto number, meaning it just generates a number, 1, 2, 3, numeric number, and it's called ID. That's your key field. Remember, a primary key is a field or fields that make a record unique. There needs to be something that allows you to point to a specific record, whether it's customer number, sales date plus invoice number, or just invoice number, or employee number, or social security number, something that makes it unique. ID alone, that's not a very good field name. I really don't know what ID of what. So we're going to change that up. We're going to call that equipment ID. And remember, when you're building your field names, you smush everything together and you use camel case, where the first letter of every word is capitalized, everything in between is lowercase. So, and then on this one, we don't want it to be an auto number. We want it to be a short text, because we actually have an equipment number that we're going to type in. Auto numbers you can never type in. And then look, down here at the bottom is our field properties, or these are characteristics. And so for every one of these fields and for every object that you create in here, there are these characteristics. And it's like if you look around a classroom, every person sitting in that classroom, they all are people, but they all have unique characteristics: height, weight, hair color, skin color, eye color, date of birth, are they left-handed or right-handed, gender. Okay, so all of those characteristics make up an individual, but they all share those characteristics, but they could be unique for each person. So in Access, those characteristics are called properties. And so we want to start working with some of the properties. So, we got to put in here. And I'm going to put this first one in, but understand I am not going to type all of these descriptions in, because you guys don't need to sit and watch me type. Okay, well, they're not having us do the properties right now, so and here's how I do it. When I am building this, I go down and I work on the properties of that field. I get that field pretty much done before I move on. So for this first one, we're just going to go down here and do the next. It's going to be called product name, and it is a short text, and I'm just hitting tab, and then in the description property, I'm not going to do a description, so tab, and then there's a table on page 88. We're going to go ahead and keep putting these in. Remember, I am not putting in the description. You should do that though. So category is a short text. I'm just tabbing around. Daily rental rate, tab, and think about it, rental rate, that is not text. We need to be able to do calculations on that, right? And it is, a rental rate would be money. So the best data type for that would be currency, because the difference between currency and a number is that a currency understands what your default currency is, which for us would be the US dollar. And so in the US, we don't do money less than a penny, right? And so when you're working with money that is currency, it will always round up to that lowest currency level, which are for the US would be pennies. So it helps with those rounding errors that you might encounter when you're dealing with money. So just, currency is a good data type when the data being represented in that table is money. And one of the things that you can't see me do, but when I'm over here in short text, I don't do this drop down. I just typed a C, and it'll go down to the first occurrence of a data type that begins with a C, which happens to be currency. So it's a shortcut way of entering your data. Okay, so date purchase. So if we were thinking of this and not just looking at the book, what do you think date purchased would be? Well, it would be a date. So I'm going to do a D, comes up date time. That's cool. That's what I want. So I'm going to go on. Comments. All right, so comments, The data type here is called long text. And so there's two text fields. There's a short text and a long text. A short text is considered a fixed length field, meaning when you're up here on your short text, you have a field size that you can say equipment ID is this size. That means that every record in the table has allocated however many characters you have. So if we left this 255, equipment ID would be 255 characters wide for every record, right? It's a fixed length. Well, if we left equipment ID at 255 and let's say it's only really 5, that's like 250 characters. We are taking up space, making our file big and bloated that we don't need to, right? We want to be efficient in our storage, in our use of the space. So short text allows you to manipulate the size. Long text is what's called a variable length field, meaning there is no, look, if I look down here at the properties, there is no property that lets me set the size. The long text is variable in that if I don't have a comment, it doesn't take any space. If I put a comment in there that's 200 characters, then that record, it takes up 200 characters. So it changes what it needs based on the contents of that field. So long text is good for things like comments, notes, explanations. One of the things you cannot do with long text is you cannot have it be a key, and you can't really index on it. So you really want to limit long text to those fields that it's appropriate for, where you might have something but many times you don't, right? So product name, we're going to have that every time. So short text, it's got a specific size. Okay, so we're in design view, so therefore we have to save it. So I'm going to come up here and do a save, and I am going to stop this movie, pick the next movie up at step 6 on page 88. All right, guys, thanks.